back, everyone, to another hashtag Finance Friday. And this month we have been talking all about compliance, and it's been maybe a little bit boring, but hopefully we've made it a little bit more interesting as we've gone down the road. And last week we specifically had a look at POPI, and we had a look at some of the principles that apply to POPI and just really the theory behind it. But I know that we don't really care about theory. And that is why we brought Veronique Philander, the founder of Chaya Legal, to come chat to us today to really just understand, what does this mean to me as a business owner? I'm small, does this really mean that I have to comply with it? So I think that is really a good conversation to have. So Veronique, I'm really happy to have you here. Just maybe for our listeners that are not familiar with you or our viewers, just go ahead and introduce yourself quickly.
Thank you so much, Christine. I am Veronique Philander from Chaya Legal, and we are a legal consulting and training company that focuses on providing affordable legal solutions to small businesses. And I'm really excited once more to be with you and to be able to hopefully add some value to your viewers and your audience in terms of understanding POPI a bit better.
Awesome. I know you've been doing a whole lot of workshops around POPI, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but maybe just to get us started, tell us a little bit more about the purpose of the POPI Act. Why is this so important?
So POPI actually has quite a bit of a history in terms of when it's really, came about. So although it's commenced last year towards, what was it, the 1st of July, and now we have 12 months in order to comply up until the 30th of June 2021. It has actually come quite some, it's had a long journey from 2013 where certain things needed to be put in place. For example, the information regulator who are acting as the watchdogs, essentially ensuring that the POPI Act is actually enforced, and that responsible parties that are processing personal information is actually complying and implementing what POPI is intending to do. So in a nutshell, POPI, its purpose is really to protect the personal information of data subjects, to also give rise to privacy rights. In the past, or not in the past, but currently, in terms of the Constitution, we actually have privacy rights, but now POPI is actually now setting out a framework of how those privacy rights now need to be complied with and actually enforced. So that's some of the things, or some of the purposes of why POPI is actually in place, and to make sure that we have remedies as well. So now that we have these rights, we've always had them, but we never had that framework. How do we actually, what happens when people are not actually, complying and are not actually, what is the word that I'm looking for? Making sure that our rights are being protected. So now we have remedies, you can go make a complaint with the information regulator, who I mentioned are the watchdogs, and you can also institute civil proceedings and so forth. So and those people can be brought to book, and they could actually get either fine or even imprisonment. So it's quite interesting what this framework is now actually enabling data subjects to do.
You're talking about words like data subjects and personal information and stuff like that. And for those of you guys that have been following with us, we spoke a bit about some of those concepts last week as we just unpacked what is personal information and all of those types of things. But maybe, Veronique, if you can just unpack this whole concept of a data subject, who is this data subject and who does POPI then try to protect?
So good question. POPI protects individuals like you and I. So the normal person on the street, all of us have privacy rights now with POPI, because we all have personal information, right? So your name, your ID number, your race, your ethnicity, your religion, all of these different things, your educational background and history, employment history, biometric information, that will all sort of fall within the ambit of personal information. Even your opinions would fall under that, right? And at the end of the day, that needs to be protected. So individuals like you and I, and then also legal entities like your private companies, your trusts, closed corporations, all of those do also now have privacy rights. So you must also make sure to protect personal information relating to those entities, those businesses. So it's quite, elaborate in that sense. So those are the two groups that would actually be defined as a data subject in terms of POPI.
Okay, awesome. Well, okay, so that makes a lot more sense. So it's really the person around whose data is being collected, right? So whoever that might be,
yes,
that would apply. Okay, so that makes sense. So as a small business, I don't have money to put into compliance. And I mean, I already potentially have to do my financial statements and submit my annual return to CRPC and have to register with the Department of Labor. Like, I don't have money for all of these things and to consult with a lawyer or an attorney to really make sure that these things are implemented properly. So, like, don't I just get a free meal or a free lunch here? Like, I can come off unscathed, or does it really apply to every single person?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I've seen, especially through our trainings as well, like that's the number one question that many small businesses actually have. Like, is it not only applicable to big business? Because at the end of the day, yeah, we small, it's either only myself in the business or I only have 5 employees, like, do I really have to comply? POPI applies to what they call responsible parties. Now, responsible parties could be, private bodies. So in other words, like I said earlier, like your private companies, your private organizations, individuals, sole props, partnerships, everybody who's trading sort of like a business type of things, also professionals. So that could be a private body. Public bodies include like your government departments on a national, provincial, and municipal level. So it really, from an industry point of view, covers everyone. But the main, focus point is not the type of organization, but rather whether you process personal information.
Okay.
So the whole definition of processing, it becomes important, because people would then argue, no, but I don't process personal information. But then what do you call it when you actually get an employee and you give them an employment contract and you ask them to fill in their details? That's processing of personal information. What do you call it when you're wanting somebody to sign a register at a training event? And put in their details, or even let's make it even more practical, like COVID compliance. You have to request certain information, like where people were last weekend, or were you were you in contact with any ABCD? Did you go out of the country? Your identity document information, your address, your temperature. So it really gets personal. So those are all information that you're collecting, and that would make you a responsible party that is processing personal information of a data subject, and that means you have to comply.
Hectic. Okay, so I think there's a lot more that maybe we don't realize that we collect. Like even simply saying, I would like your email address so that I can send you a newsletter. That is also processing personal information. So really, if you are in the online space at all, digital marketing in any way, you are most likely going to be processing personal information. That's really far-reaching. Okay, so that gives us a good idea about the who and the what. But maybe if you can explain to us the how, right? Because there are all of these principles that we need to apply, but some of it is maybe a little bit beyond us, or we don't understand how it works. So I have asked Veronique to just work through a few examples based on Upvisor information and talk us through the steps that we would need to follow to make sure that we are compliant. So Veronique, I'm going to hand over to you.
Great. So, okay, my understanding is that we already covered the 8 conditions that a responsible party needs to actually comply with or implement in their business in order to actually lawfully process lawfully process personal information. So just for your own purposes, processing that word is very, very important, because I mean, that's where you're either going to argue I'm not processing or I am processing, but processing actually includes the collection from that point. So it's actually the entire life cycle of keeping that information. So from collection to where you actually, decide you no longer need that information. So that's very important to note. So, collection, recording, whether you want to collate it or whether you want to store it, if you want to distribute it, or if you want to, at the end of the day, no longer want it and delete it. It is basically, it includes all of that. So the first thing that I would suggest as, a responsible party to actually do is to do a type of an internal audit. So you want to establish what measures are you already taking in your business in respect in respect to personal information and the processing of personal information. That's why I actually mentioned what processing means. Currently, what are you currently doing? And then you have to look at like the 8 conditions to actually see what are the actual things that I'm not doing, because all 8 conditions need to actually be complied with in order to be regarded as you are lawfully processing personal information. So that is very important. So I would say let's do an internal, personal information internal audit. And that is essentially just looking at your current processes. What personal information are you currently, collecting? From which sort of sources are you collecting it from? And then what are you doing with it? So we're just quickly going to look at like a template that I created. Okay, so let's take an example of, Upvisor's current data flows. So for example, you might have a website and you might have a information gathering. What information are you actually collecting with the chatbot? Let me rather ask that.
Yeah, I'd probably say that we are collecting maybe a name and an email address.
Okay, name. And then I'll say maybe do like email address separately. Yeah. Or you can do it together, but let's just do it like separately for now. How is this personal information being collected? We said chatbot.
Perfect.
Okay, we can do it here as well, chatbot. Why are you actually collecting this name and email address?
Sure. So
what would be?
Normally it would be if someone has a question, they would add it on, or they would ask the chatbot, and we will then be able to contact them to maybe resolve any issues that they were not able to have answered through the chatbot.
Okay, so to answer client questions.
Perfect.
And maybe also to correspond. Okay, my font is very big intentionally so that the viewers can see.
That's perfect.
But yes, okay, and then the same would, I suppose, would be for the actual email address.
Perfect.
And because it's, so let's see if this is going to work. Okay, there we go. I hope you are still able to see. Let me scroll up. What is the basis, would you say, for your personal information? So you need to have some sort of a reason why you're collecting. We just dealt with that. But then you have to have justification for actually processing it. So in other words, you're either going to get consent from the data subject directly or through a source, or you're going to have maybe, some sort of a contractual relationship with them. So the contract would be the basis, or there might be legislation that is requiring you to actually keep or to process the personal information. So in this instance, what would be what you would then regard as the basis or the legal sort of, let's say the legal basis for you to actually collect this information?
I guess because they are contacting us first, you would probably say that they are automatically giving consent, right, to be able to process this information. They're effectively asking us to contact them.
Okay, excellent. So many times when you're wanting to do sort of like direct communication with the client, that would all fall within consent. If we would like say, this is an employment contract or maybe a service level agreement, that legal basis might be something different. It might be based on a contract that you have between the two parties. But let's complete this before I digress. So who holds the personal information and who can access it? So now once your customer has completed, the questions that the chatbot is asking and they've sent it to you, who actually receives that and who is able to access it?
So that would currently only be the inbox that has been set up to receive those notifications. So in this case, it would be myself, or if I had someone managing my social media, perhaps they would also have access to it.
Okay, so or your social media manager.
Perfect.
Okay, so those are the two parties. And why does that become important? Because you need to have measures in place to make sure that the wrong, or let me, for lack of a better word, not say wrong, let's say unauthorized parties, that sounds so much more legal and a lot more, for trying to prevent that unauthorized parties actually access your customers' information. It is important to identify who has access to it and who is then able to process it further, so that you can actually track where this information is going and who must be accountable if something happens to the information at the end of the day. So the next question there is, what security safeguards are in place? Now, POPI puts a whole lot of emphasis on security safeguards. I believe that's condition number 7 of the 8 conditions. And it's really about, making sure that those measures are in place so that unauthorized, access is prevented. And I've seen, I don't know if you've seen this, Christine, and I know I'm digressing a bit, but I've seen now, company information being taken, and then you get this odd email from that particular company with a weird link. I don't know, I've seen it now for the last 2 weeks happening. And then I go and Google these companies, and, the email addresses that it's being sent from looks legit. But because we're now a bit smarter in the sense that we sort of know that people are wanting to, spam or, scam us, we sort of see like, hey, this link doesn't look proper because why is it an HTML link or whatever? And I've actually received an email from one of the companies to say, look, we've realized that somebody is trying to misrepresent us, and they actually took our information and is now sending these links. So it's really important, these safeguarding measures, to make sure that people don't take your information and get access to it. But anyway, what security safeguards are you actually putting in place to keep this particular information, the name and the email address received from your chatbot info, where is it being stored at the moment?
So it would be collected through HubSpot, which is an online CRM tool, and then you would need specific login details to be able to access that.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I took the long way now. I could have just said HubSpot. I'll just put HubSpot, yeah. And you actually need password protected.
Perfect.
So now you know that, and I'm assuming that only yourself and your social media person would have those passwords and things like that to actually get access. So it will link back. So that actual stage would actually link back to the previous stage. And how long do you normally keep this information for?
Well, I guess we don't necessarily clean up our database very often, so probably for longer than it should be held. So yeah, I guess at the moment, once it's been collected, it's sort of staying there until we tidy up our HubSpot. So 3 years, 2 years? Probably around.
Okay, so more. Okay, let's say 2 years. Now, it's actually quite interesting that you're mentioning this part because if you look at the purpose of why you're actually collecting the information is to answer a question. So assume once you've actually collected, the question and you're actually answering the client, the purpose would no longer exist. Therefore, you no longer actually have a reason to keep this name and email address any longer, unless you've gotten consent to further communicate with your client. And it actually deals with condition number 2 and 3 of the POPI Act. So condition number 2 deals with processing limitation and actually stating that we need to minimize the almost like the usage, or it must be specific to the purpose of why you're wanting the information. And if that purpose no longer exists, then you no longer have actually the right to keep the information, and the data subject must be made aware of this. So I know we all do this, but I'm also subject to the same sort of a thing, and this is the thing that POPI is trying to eliminate. That we need to start looking at then, if it's the chatbot, maybe putting in, and this is where the next one will come in, is this covered in your privacy policy when it comes to like your website or a contract or any other related sort of a document where you actually communicate the process in terms of obviously how the information that is being collected is going to be processed and how it will be safeguarded and things like that. Do you or have you included that in any document currently?
So I know that there's a little tick box that you can tick on HubSpot to indicate that they need to show the GDPR principles, which would be POPI in Europe, right? So there is an option to display that, but I guess if I'm not displaying that, then I am effectively non-compliant with this step.
Yes, because at the end of the day, let's assume, and I would probably suggest that you put it in your privacy policy because it would be easier, because at the end of the day, your customer can quickly go and click the link of the privacy policy, and there you can deal with chatbot specifically, or you can just in general, when people give you information on your website, actually just explain to them what the purposes of that, collection of the information would be for. So you could include to answer your questions, to be in communication with you, to send you promotional items, obviously giving you the option to opt out because we all don't like direct marketing. So you can actually list all of the purposes, and that would mean you would have to think a bit broader than just the chatbot, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And then just to make sure that you actually get the consent, or if it was in the privacy policy, if it was like a contract, for example, then making sure that it's actually you referencing POPI in your employment contract by having a clause in that. Or if it was maybe internal policy, making sure that you have those policies in place dealing with POPI. So just to move towards the end of this, action required. What would you what would you think is the action here?
Sure. So I would probably update the privacy policy. That would be one of the steps. And then another step would be to actually go clean up the database so that you're not ending up using it beyond what, as you said, beyond what the purpose was.
There we go.
Yeah.
So yes, that's all possible measures. And then let's say clean up database. And that would include obviously to make sure that any customer information or client information that is not supposed to be there anymore because you no longer have consent or the purpose might be expired or whatever the case might be, you've cleaned it up. And there's an easy way of maybe, or practical way that I would suggest maybe some, of the listeners to do is just send an email to your current customer, say, look, I'm wanting to get POPI compliant. Here's my updated privacy policy. And it deals with, communication, sending out newsletters, whatnot. If you are keen, can we keep your information so that we can keep in touch? If not, you have the option to opt out. So just to like send maybe a follow-up email and just to make sure that they actually want you or at least give you the consent, but also that you don't go and destroy half of your database because now POPI is saying I cannot keep information of my customers type of thing. So I think that's very important. Maybe just, you can practically just send an email, ask them, is it fine if we still send you information? Otherwise, just indicate to us that you no longer want us to send any information to you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you can continue with this sort of an exercise with all of the data flows. Obviously, for time purposes, we won't do that. But once you actually get to the actions required, you can now then put, implementation plan or your compliance framework in place to actually start making sure that those things are being done so that you can actually be POPI compliant.
Sure. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Thank you so much, Veronique. That was really helpful. And to be able to actually see how to practically implement all of these, the conditions that you have mentioned. So thank you so much. It was really helpful.
Awesome. Only a pleasure.
Cool. Okay, so for the month of April, seeing as it's been compliance month, you would have seen me talking a lot about Chaya Legal, and we've been sharing some of their posts. So for this month, we're really doing a nice little collaboration together, and there's a promo that we are running together. So Veronique, over to you to tell us a bit more about it.
Thanks, Christine. I'm really excited because I feel when we, spoke about a promo that we could possibly do, we identified, we would be, the most need at the moment. And we actually identified that we would like to assist all the businesses that are actually operating based on time. So who are actually, rendering a service. And like, for example, yourself and like myself, we have identified that, there's certain things that need to be in place. So we are launching a DIY freelance starter kit. Yes, freelance starter kit. And that would basically sort of like consist out of a freelance agreement template as well as a pricing template. And we're really excited about that because together with those templates, I mean, this is the part where we say that's not all. You will also be getting a tutorial, that's not all. You will also get a tutorial of how to actually complete both templates. And I don't think I've seen that happening anywhere else. So I feel like that is going to be something really, really nice for the freelancers out there to be able to get a resource, but also the support to make sure that they are protecting their business interest, because it is worth protecting. You are doing awesome things. So, your social media managers, your digital marketers, anybody that is, selling time, you're welcome to actually get access to this. And Christine, you can add more in terms of obviously the price, which we're also very excited about. So yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So one of the issues that I've really found with all of the business owners that I've worked with is that we are not pricing our products and services correctly. So really to help you to figure out how, like, what is my time actually worth? That is the part that we all really struggle with. Like, am I charging 20 Rand per hour or should I be charging a whole lot more? That is what this template will help you to do. So same as what Veronique said, there's a little template so in Excel, which is awesome because I love Excel. And there's a little video that explains to you how to actually to use this template to get to the point where you're able to determine how much you should actually charge, because as Veronique said, we are all worth it, right? So I want you to know how much you are worth. So this is going to be, we were doing the calculations before the session, and it's like easily over 1,000 Rand worth of information that you're getting here. But because we are all for small business and we know the struggle is real, we are giving both of these resources to you for a fraction of the price at 475, which is really, really good value. So there will be a link in the description or in the comments below, and you can just go click through and go purchase those things because it's really going to help to make a significant difference to the strategy in your business. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm so excited that Veronique has agreed to come on board with this, because I think that the legal side as well as the financial side, we don't pay enough attention to those things together. So thank you so much, Veronique, for your generosity, and for also generously sharing your time and your knowledge with us today. It was really, really a great time. And for all of our viewers, like, Veronique is a fantastic person to chat to as you are getting your POPI compliance in order. Do you maybe just quickly want to touch on some of the workshops you're doing, and then we'll close the call?
Yeah, so our next workshop, so what we do is we actually have free workshops that we do, like an introductory session with people that are interested. Our next workshop should be in the first week of May. It's on a Wednesday, normally the 5th. So Wednesday, the 5th of May. You're welcome to go to our Chaya Legal Facebook page. You will see the event there, and you are welcome to join. It's free. It's between 12 and 1. And you'll be, yes, and you'll be able to get a session there. We also have another sort of a workshop online training that is $350, and that's completely online, and it's basically to equip information officers, because the information officer is essentially the one that needs to comply with POPI on behalf of the organization. So there we actually go through all of the practical things like we did now today with the internal audit. So we actually share all of the steps and like documents and things that you need to have in place. So that's also something that could be checked out on our page and on our website as well. But come and join the free session. There you'll get all of the information. We're also doing like a package, a sort of a document template package for POPI specifically, which, you know, if you want to inquire, you're welcome to do that. So yeah, awesome to always be, you know, doing these sort of sessions, because we love small businesses and we really want to help protect your business and your interest.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Veronique. So until next week's #Finance Friday, this is Christine Tudor from Upvisor and Veronique Philander from Chaya Legal signing out. Bye.